migrant who called God to kill all Jews due to human rights laws. This is a fella who's described himself as Palestinian, Abu Wadi, arrested days after he filmed himself crossing from France in a dinghy. He remains in custody. Quite why he would have filmed himself. This guy has a social media presence of some sort. The Home Office rules bar deportation to Gaza. It's a war-torn place, and therefore their own rules say we can't send him back there. This sparked fears, understandably so, that he might be allowed to stay. In fact, he will almost certainly be allowed to stay. I don't think there's any other options now. We don't have a Rwanda scheme, remember that. Let's speak with Stephen Wolfe, former MEP, Director at the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, good afternoon to you. I said there at the beginning it's chapter 7,000 of weird decisions that might happen. It's probably chapter 170,000, frankly. We've seen all of this before.
We have. We probably see a different story every time we have someone cross the boats. There's a story per channel migrant, isn't there?
Seems to be.
And unfortunately, we have that situation once again where this man is pretty evil, by the way, from the statements that he's made. I don't think anybody would say that killing Jews and wiping out the Israel nation is a nice and kind and warm and cuddly thing that you'd want someone to say in your country. But if we do get to this situation, Ian, where they are claiming the European Courts for Human Rights, Article 8, we should throw back at them the very simple provisions that it states that you can remove somebody if they are a threat to national security, a threat to public safety, a threat to the economy, a threat to the health and morals of the nation, or indeed a threat to create further disorder and crime. And I would say all of them apply to this particular individual.
Yeah. So you could still go the Gaza route if you really could prove all of that?
I would suggest you could. The argument that would be placed in front of the court is that by sending him back to Gaza, that is breaching his human rights because perhaps there is nowhere to live, or he would be in danger of being shot by the IDF. But I don't think that's really a valid argument when you've got somebody who's made these claims, as he has done himself stupidly on TikTok. So I think that would have to be a far greater priority to say that he's a threat to the security of this nation. And if it's not Gaza, then maybe we can send him to the West Bank.
Yeah. And it seems to me, maybe this is a little conspiratorial, I wonder, did this guy orchestrate all of this? I mean, this is a bloke that already had a social, I mean, I wouldn't say he was a household name, I mean, he's hardly Anton Deck, but, you know, he's a guy that was, you know, quite happy to have his profile all over social media, tens of thousands of followers on TikTok and elsewhere, and then goes on somehow, curiously, of all the people that end up on the French coast to come to the UK, he's one of them, almost like he's documenting this for some reason, and then films himself on the boat as well, and that gets posted too. He had time somehow to film it and post. So it's all a bit curious in that respect, possibly banking on the idea that he'll be in the UK for half an hour before he's processed, and when he's processed, the human rights lawyers, they'll pop up and they'll plead his case, and he'll either stay here or voluntarily leave.
Well, it is curious, but he's not the first to have actually filmed himself coming across the boats.
Sure.
We know and watched many of them, but he's also not the first to actually put it on TikTok and tried to make fame out of this. Do you remember the couple who came across the boats about a year and a half ago? The two of them were filming themselves, a young man and a young woman, and they were saying what a great journey that they had, and they were having a lot of fun on the boat doing so. And I think they were making fun of us. They were making fun of our immigration system.
Yep.
And this individual was probably recognizing that he would probably get a lot more hits, some big followers. And when he arrives here, if he was able to successfully argue that he could stay, this is a clarion call to everybody else across the globe who wants to come across in the channel and saying, even if I can do it with all the statements that I've made and the fact that I filmed myself can stay here, you can too.
Well, anybody who's threatening mass murder or terrorism, whatever word you want to use, if they can stay, then like you say, anybody can stay, surely. I mean, he's the bullseye in terms of people you don't want here.
Absolutely, and that's why it's making us a laughing stock. And it's very clear now that what I've been arguing for a long time, and I've heard some Labour MPs recently on panels that I've been on involved in, we need to reform the UN conventions on refugees to recognize the new millennia, the way that people are just coming across for economic reasons, not really fleeing torture. We need to change the European Court of Human Rights, and in our case, leave the ECHR, leave the Human Rights Act, and translate the new changes to remove the provisions in our common law that allow these individuals to stay. Only then will we get to a proper system that allows genuine refugees to be allowed to stay here.
Spot on.